So yes, I'm going to talk about the Aarhus Convention, which is an important legal framework that enshrines and clarifies our rights to access to information about the environment and other important corollaries of that. So I'll go forward. Did the slide change? Do you see it? The next one? Yeah, great. So, yeah, the Aarhus Convention is actually really called the United States, or rather, the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe Convention to Access to Information, Public Participation in Decision Making, and Access to Justice and Environmental Matters. It's a mouthful. Aarhus is, of course, the town in Denmark where it was the meetings were held, where it was signed. It was adopted in 1998 and entered into force in October 2001. And it's primarily a European and EU centered effort, but not exclusively. 47 parties, 46 countries, and the European Union, and all of the ratifying states are in Europe and Central Asia. So it's a fairly broad, let's say, consensus, legal guidelines that are in force throughout Europe and some other parts of the world. The United States is not a signatory. Japan is not a signatory, but there are observer statuses, and the process is continuing, and the membership is expected to continue to increase. It has three pillars. And these are, again, very, very clear. One is that we have the right to access to information, and it's defined as wide and easy access to environmental information. It means it should be transparent, it should be clear. Public authorities need to provide it in a timely way, collect it, disseminate it, and there are only certain situations in which they can refuse to do so. These primarily concern national defense and things like that. The next part of this is that we have the right to public participation in the decision making, that people need to be informed about projects that are on the drawing board, that are under discussion, and they need to have the chance to participate in the decision making process. Of course, we have a term called co-creation, which is very much popularized in sociology, et cetera. This is what this defines, and it is expected that people's participation, or the participation by informed citizens, by informed public, will actually improve the process and lead to better decisions, and crucially will increase that people see these decisions as legitimate. A lot of our issues now with energy, with pollution, with climate change centers on this notion that actors, countries, and industry, et cetera, are behaving illegitimately. So this is important. And the last one is justice. If the first two rights are not upheld, we have the right to recourse to justice. And these things need teeth. And this is often what's missing in these kinds of principles and guidelines that are promoted by government, is where is the actual explicit right to justice in this. So there are some great strengths to this. It is as a statement of fundamental rights. This is the most powerful thing. And of course, this is sort of a spin-off from the UN Declaration of Human Rights, which was basically established really in the late 1940s, and this is something that is really, really essential for us to understand, that establishing one set of rights leads to this sort of cascading effect that illuminate other rights that we have, and this is one of those examples. And of course, here this is wonderful, something we need to keep in mind. Public, both in the present and future generations, have the right to know and to live in a healthy environment. And this right of unborn people is, of course, very, very crucial. Another thing is that it's multilateral. It's not putting it all in one, responsibility and the action in one body. It is government governed and governance by disclosure. This is very, very essential. So the notion of open government, open information, and this importance of transparency and public participation, that these are very, very great strengths of it. There are issues, though, things that are weak. It does give wide leadway to individual nations to interpret it as they see fit. to shape priorities, et cetera, to say, oh, yes, we're in compliance on the basis of this, and one nation's degree of compliance may be different from another nation's. It also depends a lot on NGOs to represent the public interest. And I would say, well, for instance, that would be SafeCast. It could be someone like Greenpeace. It could be someone else, Friends of Earth, or other bodies. They may be global, they may be national, they may be local. But in terms of this direct democracy, direct action, it doesn't really make that clear. It sort of assumes that there will be bodies representing civil society that are participating in these decisions, et cetera. Other thing is that is procedural. It's less about, what are the outcomes that we want, and more about, well, what is the process we will put in place that makes sure that people are given the ability to participate. So this is some of the issues. Other issues I mentioned that one of the loopholes is national defense. So you can imagine a nation saying, well, we're not going to disclose our fossil fuel or petroleum data because that's crucial for our national defense. You can imagine that sort of, or certainly in the nuclear sphere, this is very, 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 very prominent because of the connection between nuclear energy and nuclear weapons development. So this is one issue, and also there are loopholes for intellectual property. So corporations can say, this is our secret. We can't disclose that much. And so these things do come up from time to time. Some of the implications, though, are that we are behaving collectively, as societies, and we have the right to be responsible. And often when decisions are taken out of our hands, made even through some sort of representative democracy, which these things don't function well, especially in terms of energy, pollution, et cetera, rarely function well. We have the right to be responsible and to say, no, we do not want that factory, we do not want that energy system, or to say, yes, we do want that system, even though we recognize there are risks, there are pollutions, there are other things coming from it. So we need to have that responsibility. And people can accept a risk that they don't completely understand if they feel that the process by which the decisions were made were fair. And again, we see this in issues like nuclear waste storage, et cetera. If people are involved and they're able to really influence the process and have the right to say no, then they are more likely to accept these decisions, as fair. Fairness is the key. And finally, things like health risks, and so much of our issues about climate change and pollution, et cetera, environmental risk are about health. The self-determination often plays a greater role in people's the way people make their decisions on how to behave than scientific evidence. So really is scientific. You can have all the evidence you want in the world, but if it's in the typical decide, announce, defend process, this top-down process that we still have so often, this makes people frustrated, and it makes us feel powerless. It kind of the situation now. But no matter how much evidence you have, if you feel it has been determined in a process of self-determination, then you feel you're more in control, and this can lead to a much, much more positive outcome and process. So I think that's the end of what I was going to say. There's some links in the presentation. We're sharing the presentation, several links, about the Ahrus Convention. I do think people should familiarize themselves with it. I'm often surprised that even many people, professionals working in the environmental area, are not familiar with this powerful legal basis for our rights and guiding the actions that we need to take. So I will stop there.
Thank you so much. Maybe a quick follow-up question. So
10
thanks so
minutes,
much for this.
10 minutes.
Yeah, you did really good on the time. So the sort of follow-up question that I have is that, so we've taken notes. One question is, if this framework is very powerful, let's say, but we can see that Japan, USA, China are not signatories. But if, let's say, this was adopted, what do you think? What do you think it would take to actually more countries to adopt it? What is holding them back?
It's not a simple question. Because these things are binding, it requires, and again, I want to stress that this is a binding, agreement. so legally binding. And we do see in the case of the EU, often this is referred to in other kinds of transparency and environmental regulation, including, as we now know, for instance, circularity, making circular systems more sustainable, circular renewable systems being legislated in Europe. Often this Aarhus Convention is a key to that. I think it comes down to simply political will. And, there is this resistance by nations, especially by governments, by leadership, who are strongly, of course, influenced by industry and who are often their main constituents. So this is there's resistance to make these kinds of commitments. It's kind of remarkable that the Aarhus Convention was passed. This is often the case. It's like, again, we talk about the Paris agreements or these other things. These are very, very difficult often to get the political will to actually adopt them. So it's purely political. But I can imagine other agreements within nations, within regional governments that are based on these principles. These principles can be adopted, and I think they should be adopted throughout, not just at the very, very top, but throughout governance and throughout society.